Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to maybe challenge a fundamental assumption most of us have about modern life.
Which is?
Just how fragile our society really is. And maybe more pointedly, what actually happens to, human behavior when the comforts and certainties we rely on are suddenly just gone.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to think about, isn't it? And something most people probably don't dwell on much. We sort of live in this protected bubble.
We do. Where life generally makes sense, things are predictable.
But what happens when that bubble bursts?
Exactly. So this deep dive is all about plunging into those profound and often pretty overlooked consequences of a long-term nationwide grid-down scenario.
A really serious event.
A very serious event. And we're doing this through the sharp, often unsettling lens of an expert who spent decades researching this specific topic.
Okay. Our primary source for this is Survival Theory 2 by Jonathan Hollerman. Now, he's got extensive military and preparedness experience, and let's just say he doesn't shy away from the hard truths.
No, he certainly doesn't. Our mission here is really to cut through some of the common misconceptions, maybe the noise, that exists within the preparedness community.
Okay.
Hollerman offers a realistic, maybe deeply challenging perspective on what an event like this would truly entail. And he puts a stark focus on how human psychology just fundamentally shifts when people are desperate, starving, and critically, living without the rule of law.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a comfortable picture he paints, but it's one he argues we absolutely need to understand.
Right. And Jonathan Hollerman has a very strong and quite critical view on the current state of what he calls the prepper sphere. He basically claims there's far more misinformation than quality information out there.
Which leads to problems.
Big problems, in his view. It leads people to spend loads of cash on the wrong survival supplies. And, maybe even worse, pursue the wrong plan of action.
And he really doesn't pull any punches, does he? He's pretty harsh on folks he calls prepper experts.
Yeah, he is.
Stating that 95% of them are vastly undereducated on the threat posed by the psychology of starving and desperate Americans. Oh, that's a bold claim.
It is, but he does back it up with some pretty striking examples of what he considers dangerous misinformation.
Okay, like what?
Well, one of his main examples is a YouTube video. Apparently, as of September 2022, it had something like 465,000 views.
Wow.
And this video promotes a simple Home Depot metal garbage can as the absolute best method for an EMP-proof Faraday cage. It even claims it protects against solar flares.
Okay, I think I might have even seen stuff like that. It sounds plausible on the surface, maybe?
Well, Hollerman really takes issue with it. He says this video shows a complete lack of understanding about the different EMP pulses, the E1, E2, and E3.
Right, which are distinct.
Very distinct, and they affect electronics differently, and they're also quite different from the effects of a solar flare, which causes more like geomagnetic disturbances, slower stuff.
And the testing method.
Also flawed, he says. Just putting a radio inside and listening for static, it doesn't cut it.
Right.
And what he finds really frustrating is that even though comments pointed out these errors, the video was still up. People are still watching it.
That's worrying. Okay, what else?
He also goes after what he sees as major scams in the long-term food storage industry.
Oh, interesting.
Hollerman claims most companies are guilty of deceitful serving size recommendations. Meaning people often end up buying food thinking they have, say, a month's worth, but they actually have less than 30 to 40% of the actual food calories they'd need.
Ouch. So, okay, for you listening, if you're looking into food storage, what's the key takeaway then? How do you avoid that trap?
His advice is pretty blunt. The only truly reliable way to buy long-term food is by knowing your personal caloric needs and buying your long-term food based on the food's caloric count.
So ignore the servings.
Pretty much. Focus on the raw calories. He stresses it's about efficiency and actual survival needs, not just marketing.
Makes sense. Okay, another common prep item. Survival seed vaults. They sound great, right? Pre-packaged seeds for growing food after a collapse.
Seems like a good idea. But Hollerman warns about some significant, often overlooked risks here, too.
Such as?
Well, you often don't know the origin of those seeds or if they're even suited for your climate. He strongly advises against just trusting your life to them without doing a trial in your own garden at your retreat location.
Test them first.
Absolutely. He mentions his own very poor experience with some varieties from one vault he tried in Pennsylvania. He basically says it's a huge gamble with your family's food security.
A gamble you can't afford in that situation.
Exactly.
Okay, so if a lot of the common advice is, let's say, potentially flawed according to Hollerman, What does he identify as the real underlying threat? He seems to break it down into three factors that are all intertwined.
Yeah, three things he believes most people, even planners, just don't fully grasp. The first one is just raw human desperation. Right. He argues that most of us, most Americans, live in what he calls a protected bubble. Life generally makes sense. Interactions are mostly normal, safe, and sane. There's this underlying expectation of order.
Right. The social contract, sort of.
Exactly. But now, picture yourself maybe a month into a total grid-down scenario. Hollerman paints this vivid, almost unbearable picture. He writes, "Nothing makes sense. You can't trust anyone. Nobody speaks to one another anymore, and entering a simple conversation with a stranger could get you robbed or killed."
Wow. That's stark.
It gets worse. He shares this chilling anecdote about seeing a bloated body in the street, someone killed over a single can of baked beans.
Just horrific.
And he continues that description. Raw sewage backing up in homes, people scavenging for rotten food, having to, close your eyes and hold your nose while eating something with worms in it.
Oh, God.
And the feeling, the profound, crushing shame and failure of not being able to provide for your kids, even finding yourself eating some of that awful food because you're just too hungry to care anymore.
This is where it gets really, really unsettling. Because he concludes that part by emphasizing you almost can't grasp this level of desperation intellectually beforehand. He says, you can't quantify it, you can't explain it, you can't study it.
It's a purely situational horror, something beyond normal understanding until you're actually in it.
Which, I suppose, leads directly into the second factor he highlights.
Which is starvation itself, deeply interconnected, obviously. Hollerman brings up the Minnesota starvation experiment.
Right, from the 1940s. I've heard of that.
Yeah, a very regimented study of semi-starvation. Men were restricted to half rations, about 5,570 calories a day, for 24 weeks.
And the effects were dramatic, weren't they?
Absolutely profound. Widespread apathy, extreme lethargy, loss of interest in sex, social withdrawal, isolation.
Cognitive decline, too.
Big time. A significant decline in concentration, comprehension, and judgment. And maybe most disturbingly, many developed an almost pornographic obsession with food. It consumed their thoughts.
And Hollerman relates this to his own experience.
He does. He talks about his SEER training, that's the military's survival, evasion, resistance, and escape school. He lost 15 pounds in just 3 weeks up in Washington State and says he personally experienced that intense, all-consuming food obsession. He understood it firsthand.
Okay, and then he uses historical examples to really drive the point home.
Yes, some truly harrowing case studies. First, the Holodomor. The Ukraine famine from 1932-1933, estimates range from 7 and 10 million Ukrainians starving to death.
Unimaginable numbers.
And the societal breakdown. He emphasizes it was total. Each house became an entity in itself. Friends and even relatives became strangers. Mothers abandoned their children and brother turned away from brother.
Just complete social disintegration.
The Holodomor provides these chilling insights into how degraded human behavior can become under extreme starvation. What's truly shocking are the police reports he cites, from places like Kharkiv and Kiev provinces, detailing desperate acts, even parents killing their own children for food. It just shows how quickly norms erode, how people can be stripped down to an almost animalistic level when hunger is the only drive left.
And the physical suffering.
Intense. Conditions like scurvy, dropsy, where legs swell and made their skin very thin, even transparent, skin turning yellow and black.
Just awful.
He includes these horrific images, like people stepping over corpses on railroad tracks, feeling absolutely nothing, as if I were stepping over logs. The ubiquitous odor of decomposing bodies.
Weren't there reports of people being buried alive?
Chillingly, yes. Very ill people being buried alive, just utter breakdown.
Okay, and he also mentions another famine.
He points to the Great Chinese Famine, 1958 to 1962, which likewise saw widespread mental illness, mass hysteria, and very high rates of suicide as starvation just gripped the entire nation.
So the critical link he's drawing from all this devastation, what's the core warning?
It's a dire warning, aimed squarely at emergency planners, government officials, anyone in charge, he says. If you are unable to consistently and adequately feed your emergency personnel, first responders, electrical engineers, military members, and all their family members, every plan you devise will eventually fail.
So feeding the responders and their families is the absolute linchpin.
He suggests it's the ultimate choke point. If you can't do that, everything else falls apart eventually.
Okay, which leads us straight into his third factor.
Living without rule of law. WROL, as it's often called.
Yeah.
Here, Hollerman brings in the Milgram experiment from 1963, famously inspired by the Holocaust.
The one with the electric shocks.
That's the one. Psychologists predicted maybe only 1% of Americans would go all the way in shocking a supposed mental patient to death just because an authority figure told them to.
But the reality was much worse.
Much, much worse. Over 65% went all the way, simply by obeying those in authority.
Just because someone in a lab coat told them to keep going?
Exactly. And Hollerman connects this directly to Hannah Arendt's idea of the banality of evil.
Suggesting that ordinary people can do terrible things under certain pressures?
Yeah, that outside situational forces can be applied to a normal family man to carry out extraordinary evil. It's a really chilling thought about how susceptible we might be.
And he uses another example here, a more recent one.
Yes, he emphasizes Selko Begovich's first-hand account of the Balkan Wars from 1992 to 1995, calls it a must-read book.
What was that like?
Begovich describes how violence just became a new way of living. It demanded a complete change of mindset simply to survive day to day.
And the specifics, I imagine they're grim.
Extremely grim. Hollerman recounts things like people burned alive inside their homes and people enjoying watching this. And private prisons were made where you could go and torture other folks for fun or simply rape women as a reward.
Just unthinkable cruelty.
But it's important, Hollerman points out a nuance here. In the Balkans conflict Selko described, the starvation wasn't quite as severe as, say, the Holodomor. There were occasional food drops, no reported cannibalism.
But the lawlessness was extreme.
Virtually zero rule of law. So the nature of the atrocities shifted with the context, but the human capacity for horror, for cruelty, it remained.
Okay, so Hollerman argues there's this dangerous normalcy bias baked into how we usually plan for disasters, right?
Deeply embedded, he says. Every report or plan for disaster relief just assumes things like electricity in some form, communication networks, and all hands on deck.
They assume a level of function that might not exist.
Exactly. He challenges this with really uncomfortable questions like, how will their plans function with only 50% of their manpower in place? What if, after 6 months, they only retain 20% of their manpower or less?
Questions that maybe planners don't want to face.
He implies they lack the imagination or perhaps the willingness to truly envision that kind of complete societal breakdown.
And what about the military? We often assume they'd be the ones to restore order.
Well, Hollerman points out they rely heavily on civilian infrastructure, too, for food, for electricity.
Okay.
And he states his strong belief that if chaos and starvation spread nationwide, a good portion of your troops will desert their post to go home and check on their immediate family members.
They'll prioritize their own families.
Understandably right. He even points to General Sherman's march during the Civil War as historical evidence of significant desertion rates, even from organized armies under stress.
Wow. Okay, so this leads to a pretty stark warning about cities specifically.
Yeah, he bluntly calls them death traps.
Why?
The sheer population density. You have hundreds, if not thousands, of times more people per square mile fighting for the same limited, zero-sum resources.
Intense competition.
And in that environment, he warns, every person you encounter is a potential threat. Trust evaporates.
He gives a specific, quite chilling scenario about sending troops into a city, doesn't he?
He does. A truly dire warning about sending, say, the National Guard into a major city like San Antonio. He believes if the grid isn't fixed within a couple of days, things will go very badly for them. They could quickly become targets themselves.
Targets of?
Targets of what he vividly calls 2.5 million angry and well-armed Texans. It's a stark image meant to force you to reconsider just how stable urban environments would actually be.
Okay. So given this really unsettling reality he paints, Hollerman then challenges a lot of the conventional wisdom about practical preparedness.
Absolutely. He tackles some common ideas head-on. One big one is the illusion of just staying put in your suburban home.
Thinking you can just lay low.
Right. And this is where his frankness really kicks in. He says trying to hide the fact that you are the only one on your block not getting skinny and gaunt is completely futile. He compares it to trying to sell oceanfront property in Kansas.
Not likely to work.
Not likely at all. He argues a 6-foot privacy fence, even a hidden garden in suburbia, it'll be discovered eventually once desperation really sets in. People will notice.
Okay. What about scavenging? That's often portrayed as a viable strategy.
He strongly warns against relying on scavenging as your main plan for long-term survival. He says it's almost assuredly going to get yourself killed.
Too dangerous.
Too dangerous, too much competition, too unpredictable.
And he poses a really challenging moral question here, doesn't he? To you, the listener.
He does. He asks, do you have to be starving before you try and scavenge? He pushes you to think, would you feel personally and morally responsible if a loved one was starving because you waited too long, didn't act immediately to find resources?
It's tough.
It is. But he's quick to clarify this very specific, harsh reasoning only applies to that very niche situation of a long-term grid-down event.
Not your typical localized disaster.
Exactly. Not for a hurricane or flood where law and order usually return relatively quickly. That distinction is crucial.
Okay. So if staying put is risky and scavenging is deadly, what's the alternative he pushes?
He stresses the critical importance of having a dedicated survival retreat, a location away from population centers.
But he also warns it's not simple.
Definitely not. He says upfront, there is no 10-step process for preparing for the end of the world. No one-size-fits-all plan.
It has to be personalized.
Strongly emphasizes that. Any effective plan must be custom-tailored. It depends on your drastically different needs, financial resources, group size, geography, limitations, and group dynamics. You absolutely cannot just copy someone else's plan.
Makes sense. What about group size for a retreat? Does he have recommendations?
He suggests an ideal survival group might be around 5 to 6 family units, maybe a maximum of 20 or so individuals, critically with varying skill sets.
But there's a catch.
A big one. He offers a stern caution. You must thoroughly vet the group beforehand and ensure that every family unit has at least a year's worth of long-term food for every one of their members, pre-stocked.
Trust in resources are key.
Paramount, he argues.
Okay, he proposes a specific strategy, too. The Uncle Charlie's farm idea.
Yeah, kind of a unique approach. If you have a relative, an Uncle Charlie, whose farm meets the strict requirements for a defensible, sustainable retreat location, it could be viable.
But there are steps involved.
Crucial steps. You have to discuss plans openly with Uncle Charlie before anything happens. You need to pre-position supplies there. And, super important, maintain strict secrecy. He warns, telling others about your plans can be a deadly mistake.
Loose lips sink ships, as they say.
Exactly. And another critical point, Uncle Charlie and any other relatives living there must have their own year's worth of food stored.
Or they'll eat yours.
Or your own family's one-year food storage is going to be gone in a matter of months. It reinforces that need for total self-sufficiency, even within a trusted group.
Okay, what if you don't have an Uncle Charlie with a perfect farm?
He suggests other options, researching, even visiting beforehand, remote rental cabins or maybe vacant properties that might be suitable.
And the plan there?
The strategy is, after the SHTF, after the widespread crisis hits, you approach these locations, not aggressively, but moving in as potential caretakers and temporary residents. You need a well-crafted pitch about mutual benefits. Maybe you have skills, supplies they need.
It's a negotiation.
Absolutely. He stresses very clearly, I am not advocating taking the location by force. And he adds, if they kick you out, get packing. It's about finding a mutually agreeable situation or moving on.
He also mentions a B&B strategy.
Yeah, as a potentially more immediate option. This involves building rapport now with owners of remote bed and breakfasts or similar places.
So you have a relationship already.
Exactly. Then, post-event, you approach with cash, check for vacancies as other guests inevitably leave. You're leveraging that pre-existing goodwill.
Interesting. And appearance matters when doing all this approaching.
Hugely important, he says. When approaching potential allies or locations, look like a regular Joe or maybe a good old country boy, not decked out in tactical gear.
Don't look threatening.
Right. Don't wear your plate carrier or carry your battle rifle, he advises. But he does suggest have a concealed handgun for personal protection. It's about blending in, not escalating tension.
Okay. Let's shift to optimizing supplies. He gets pretty specific here, especially on food.
Very specific. He focuses on cheap, calorie-dense staples, things like white rice. He calculates over 55,000 calories for about $50 a case.
Wow, that's dense.
Yeah. Quick oats, 40,000 calories for $35. Elbow macaroni, 30,000 for $35. All-purpose flour, 38,000 calories for about $38 a case.
Basic stuff.
Basic, maybe not perfectly healthy long-term, he acknowledges that, but they can absolutely sustain life when calories are king.
And to deal with a nutritional shortcoming.
He advises stocking multivitamins, definitely, and specifically niacin, which is vitamin B3.
Why niacin?
It's crucial if you're relying heavily on corn, which many might. Niacin prevents pellagra, a nasty deficiency disease. Plus, he adds, learning how to make lime to treat corn nixtamalization is vital for unlocking its nutrients.
Good practical tips. What about gardening? Often seen as a key survival skill.
It is, but he advises focusing your efforts. Don't try to grow everything. He recommends concentrating on under 12 varieties of vegetables.
Which ones?
Ones that are relatively easy to grow and, again, caloric dense. He lists things like potatoes, zucchini, peppers, tomatoes, and pole beans.
And he highlights potatoes specifically.
Yeah, calls potatoes one of the hardiest and longest storing vegetables, yet says they're often overlooked in preparedness plans compared to maybe more glamorous veggies.
He also mentions true potato seeds. TPS.
Right, TPS, as an alternative to planting traditional seed potato tubers.
What's the advantage?
Several benefits for long-term farming, he says. You only need low quantities of seeds. Critically, the tiny seeds don't look like a food source to desperate people, unlike tubers. And planting seeds avoids the disease risks that can build up in potato tubers over generations. It's a smart, long-term strategic move.
Okay. Defensive measures. How does he advise protecting that vital food storage?
He's pretty insistent on this. He says 90% or more of your long-term food needs to be in a very well-hidden underground structure somewhere else on your property and outside the four walls of your house.
Not in the house itself.
Not the main stash. Keep only a couple of days' worth of food inside the retreat itself for immediate use. The bulk needs to be hidden separately.
And hiding the entrance.
He suggests creative camouflage. Hide bunker entrances under an animal shelter, chicken coop, or garden shed next to the outhouse. Places people wouldn't normally look twice or want to investigate closely. Maximum stealth.
Makes sense. What about firearms? Always a big topic in preparedness.
Yep. For handguns, he very strongly urges you towards a Glock.
Why Glock?
Primarily for its renowned reliability. He also suggests that external safeties just add unnecessary complexity in a high-stress life-or-death situation. Simpler is better under pressure.
And rifles.
He strongly recommends getting a .30 caliber suppressor. He emphasizes one with quick attach capability.
Why .30 caliber?
Versatility. A good .30 cal suppressor can be used effectively across multiple common rifle calibers like 5.56, .223, .308, .300 blackout, even .22 sometimes. He notes it offers almost the same dry performance as a .223 suppressor when used on a 5.56 rifle. That's decibel reduction, making it quieter.
But he cautions about trying to make a 5.56 truly silent.
Right. He advises against trying to completely silence a supersonic 5.56 round because you lose too much effectiveness. For really quiet work like hunting without attracting attention, he suggests a Ruger 2022 or better yet, a bolt-action .22 with subsonic ammo and a suppressor.
Okay. Optics, night vision, thermal.
He prioritizes thermal for observation, recommends a higher 640 resolution. Thermal Optic mentions the FLIR Scout 3 640 as an example for use in a watchtower or for scanning surroundings. Says it's generally more useful for detection than a similarly priced Gen 1 night vision device.
And if you are getting night vision?
For actual night vision devices, NDDs, he recommends getting nothing less than a Gen 2 plus intensifier tube, which he notes isn't cheap, maybe around $3,000.
And for mounting on a rifle?
He suggests using an NVD clip-on that attaches in front of your regular rifle scope, rather than a dedicated NVD scope. More adaptable that way.
Interesting. Mobility is key too, right? Getting around without gas.
Crucial. He discusses electric bicycles, e-bikes, as a surprisingly viable solution, especially for certain scenarios.
Like what?
He sees them as best suited for single people or young couples who live in a city and are on a fixed budget, or maybe for someone needing to get out of an urban zone to a pre-staged 4x4 BOV bug-out vehicle, maybe hidden in a storage unit 10 miles out.
A way to bridge that last mile or initial escape.
Exactly. He also mentions lightweight electric dirt bikes like the Saran X, powerful 6,000-watt motor, speeds up to 50-mile-an-hour, offers significant off-road mobility without relying on gasoline.
Cool tech. Okay, briefly, any other specific year recommendations? Knives, flashlights?
Yeah, he touches on those.
Yeah.
For knives, suggests things like the Kershaw Blur or various buck models like the Momentum, Vantage Pro, Sprint Pro Notes. These are good replacements for some discontinued favorites like the Kershaw Camber. Robust, reliable tools.
And flashlights.
Discusses Surefire, a popular brand, but notes they discontinued their AA battery models. He acknowledges that the CR123 batteries they use offer superior performance, but...
But A's are everywhere.
Exactly. The commonality of AA batteries could be a real advantage in a long-term grid-down scenario where specialized batteries become impossible to find. It's a trade-off to consider.
Okay. So pulling this all together, what's the path forward? What's the big takeaway from Hollerman's perspective?
Well, he really reiterates an uncomfortable reality. Surviving a genuine long-term grid-down scenario is going to be very difficult, even if you prepare.
Preparation helps, but it's not a guarantee.
Not by a long shot. He stresses that he believes the suffering will be far worse than the historical examples I provided, suggesting that things like the Holodomor, those were just glimpses. The reality could be even deeper into that abyss.
That's sobering, and he sees the threat itself as growing.
He does. He emphasizes the increasing vulnerability of the U.S. electric grid, attributes it partly to reliance on renewable energy sources, which can be less stable, and also the newer, more sensitive smart grid technologies.
More complex, more points of failure.
Right. And at the same time, the threats are increasing. Threats from foreign nation, state, or terrorist organization. He specifically mentions Iran having the fourth largest cyber army and North Korea with a mentally unstable leader whose economy is non-existent already, implying they might have less to lose from disruptive actions.
A dangerous convergence of vulnerability and threat.
That's how he frames it.
So what's his call to action? How do we address this on a larger scale?
His proposed solution for getting real action, for getting widespread awareness and political will is, well, it's quite specific.
Okay.
He firmly believes the only way you will ever get populist backing and the politicians in government to write the check to fix it is through a major motion picture with a big budget cast. Yeah. A movie that is truly shocking in nature and show in living color some of the atrocities that could occur. He thinks people need that visceral visual shock to truly grasp the stakes and demand action.
Seeing is believing, essentially.
That seems to be his conviction. People need to see it to believe it's possible and demand preventative measures.
And he's involved in trying to make this happen.
He is. He mentions his new role as Deputy Director of the U.S. Task Force on National and Homeland Security. Part of his aim there is to bring this kind of awareness directly to the American people and, crucially, to policymakers.
Well, this deep dive has definitely presented some incredibly difficult truths.
Yeah.
Jonathan Hollerman's work really, it forces you to challenge your core assumptions, doesn't it? About human nature, about societal resilience when things truly fall apart.
Yeah, it absolutely does. It's not comfortable listening, I'm sure.
Not at all. It's a lot to process. The idea of human psychology just unraveling under that kind of extreme duress, the lines of morality blurring when survival becomes the only instinct left. It really forces you, the listener, to confront some deeply unsettling questions, not just about your supplies, your tangible preps, but about your own assumptions, your own inner resilience maybe. What truly would you do if the foundations of society just crumbled away and human nature was stripped bare like that?
A profound question to leave people with.